HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Study Like a Champ, the psychology-based guide to Grade A study habits, by Regan A. Gurung, Ph.D., and John Dunlosky, Ph.D. Read by Jason Vu. Publisher's note: this audiobook contains references to material present in the print and ebook editions of the book. Preface. Or why you should really care about what's in this book. If you want to know the best way to learn, this book is for you. Study Like a Champ provides you with the answer to the often asked question, what can I do to get an A? We take years of psychological research on how learning works and what strategies best help one learn, and we translate the results into easy-to-understand, pragmatic, and, most important, easy-to-follow tips. But that's not all. We have watched and listened as our students have tried to study better. We have seen students read other books on how to study, yet still not improve. Part of the reason why is that it is easy for scientists and instructors to tell you what to do, but it is a whole other thing to actually be able to do it. So, we looked for reasons why students have trouble following guidance on how to study and have come up with some hacks to help. We also show you evidence to support our recommendations. We want you to know what to do and why to do it. Furthermore, we show you which strategies work best for learning different kinds of material. Not every class is the same. What it takes to do well in an introductory psychology class may not be the same as what it takes to do well in a computer science class. We have your back. This guide was written by expert psychology teachers who also conduct the very research on which the tips are based. You are in good hands. Collectively, we have published more than 200 research articles on the very material we share with you. We invite you behind the curtain so you can see the secrets of research conducted both in laboratories as well as in classrooms. However, although we are well versed in writing for peer-reviewed research journals, we wrote this book for you, dear student, not for academic researchers. This book is designed to be useful for every college student who wants to know how to learn well. We recognize that many instructors do not spend much time teaching students how to learn. Many college faculty either believe students have learned how to learn either in high school or in a University 101 type course, or they do not believe it is their job to teach learning skills. In other cases, faculty may share suggestions about the best ways to study. For example, make sure you spread out your studying. Make sure you test yourself, but do not share exactly how to follow the advice, nor do they reward optimal study habits. Even hardworking students often believe that it is the amount of time that they study, not exactly how they use that time to study, that is most important. We wrote this book to address these issues head-on, to explain how to schedule your study time and exactly what to do when you sit down to study. We also want to demystify the cognitive science behind how people learn, and thus we provide simple, classroom-tested tools to begin and maintain habits that will foster lifelong learning. We want you to be a study champion. Accordingly, we provide clear steps on how to plan, monitor, and evaluate your learning with easy-to-follow instructions. In essence, we first explain what to do, and then we show why each step matters. This is not a textbook. It is your training manual to become a study champion. Our origin story. At one time, we were both graduate students at the University of Washington in Seattle. We were not the same age as we are now, and we definitely did not have the same length of hair back then. John evidently did not understand what a barber was for. Regan remembers his first sight of John as being a blur of hair flying by as John strode down the corridor to his lab past Regan's office. John is a cognitive psychologist. Regan is a social psychologist. We both love trying to understand what makes people learn better. After graduate school, we went in two different directions, both literally in terms of geography and figuratively in terms of our research interests. Fast forward a sizable number of years, we were both successful researchers and established teachers and noticed that so much good science was available about learning, but so little of it focused on how to explain the science to students. Sometimes instructors would tell students what to do in one class, but most of the faculty we talked with shared that they focused more on content in their classes and did not share how their students should best learn the content. And, after all, many faculty, who are not experts on cognition, have misconceptions about learning. Part 1. Groundwork. Chapter 1. So, you think you know how to study. Let's talk about it. In this chapter, you will learn why you may not really know what you think you know, major myths about learning, and the key factors that predict learning. To be a champion learner, you need to look no further than what makes athletes champions. Kayla, one of our students, is a champion gymnast. She is also a champion student with a straight 4.0 grade point average, the quintessential student athlete. If you ask her how she became a champion, Kayla will tell you 2 elements are key: know what to do, and then practice a lot. It also pays to have great coaches. We are here to help with the coaching part and show you what to do. Although we do not claim greatness, we are modest. Not only have we been coaching students on how to study for years, but we also have done the research exploring how to be a study champion. Join us, and you too can be a study champion. You will know exactly what to do. We will show you how to do it. All you need to do is practice. Most students coming to college have a set way of doing things. After all, studying is pretty straightforward, right? You go to class, take notes, get the book, read it, maybe reread it, then read your notes, make flashcards, and interact with them a night or two before the exam, and then you are ready, right? Whereas some students do not do all of the activities in the last sentence, many do and use additional strategies as well. But are these the best ways to study? You might be surprised to learn what the research says. Be prepared to be shocked. We know you may already have your favorite study techniques. After all, parents and teachers always tell you how to study. Are your study habits good ones? You will find out the answer to this question as you listen on. We will share the most effective approaches to studying like a champion. In the next 8 chapters, we provide solutions to study challenges, such as how to best use flashcards and many others as well. Our goal is to highlight various ways that students study and point out which ways really are not so effective. But most important, we highlight those that work well and describe in detail how to use them with fidelity. Wait. What about talk about it? The subtitle of this chapter is not an obscenity. Yes, we evoke the retort, forget about it, while we pun about talking about studying. The term is, perhaps, at the heart of what determines how much effort you put into studying and whether you stop. We all think we know how to study, and most of us are doing something right as long as we are doing something at all. The first challenge when studying is to get a good sense of what you know and what you do not. Cognitive scientists call this the feeling of knowing, FOC. For every class, assignment, or topic, you have a FOC. Sometimes the FOC is strong, and you really believe you know the course material. The bad news? Your FOCs are often unreliable indicators of whether you really do know something. But before we overview some major myths about learning, let's take a look at what you already may know. Remember, it is always a good idea to first establish what you already know before facing new information. The following survey was developed for a research project on study habits. Start now. How are your study habits? Think about your most challenging class. Now answer each of the questions that follow in regard to how you study for that class. For each question, indicate the extent to which you agree or disagree using the following scale. Strongly disagree equals 1. Disagree equals 2. Somewhat disagree equals 3. Somewhat agree equals 4. Strongly agree equals 5. Part 1. Please think about how you utilize highlighting and underlining when marking potentially important portions of to-be-learned materials while reading. 1. Within an assigned reading, I highlight or underline information. 2. I frequently highlight or underline the information within one page. 3. I prefer to use or study material in an assigned reading that has been previously highlighted or underlined by a previous user. 4. I look at or use the material I previously highlighted or underlined within a given week. 5. I find highlighting or underlining information in an assigned reading useful. Part 2. Please think about writing summaries of various lengths of to-be-learned texts. 1. After assigned readings, I write summaries on the previous read material. 2. After lectures, I write summaries on the information discussed. 3. I am assigned to write summaries on lecture or reading materials. 4. I find writing summaries of recently learned materials useful. Part 3. Please think about using keywords and mental imagery to associate verbal materials. 1. I associate keywords with mental imagery to learn verbal material. 2. I use the strategy of associating keywords with mental imagery in relation to verbal material when taking an exam. 3. I find using keywords and mental imagery to associate verbal materials useful. Part 4. Please think about attempting to form mental images of text materials while reading or listening. 1. I form mental images of text materials while reading or listening. 2. I recall mental images of text images that were formed while reading or listening on an exam. 3. I find forming mental images of text materials while reading or listening useful. Part 5. Please think about restudying text material again after an initial reading. 1. I go back to reread the information I did not comprehend. 2. I go back to reread assigned readings when preparing for an exam. 3. I am able to recall information that I have reread when taking an exam. 4. I am able to understand the text material after the second time of rereading the initial reading. 5. I find rereading information that I have previously read useful. Part 6. Please think about implementing a schedule of practice that mixes different kinds of problems, or a schedule of study that mixes different kinds of material within a single study session. 1. I mix different kinds of problems within a single study session. 2. I study different kinds of material within a single study session. 3. I find using practice that mixes different kinds of problems within a single study session useful. 4. I find studying different kinds of material within a single study session useful. Part 7. Please think about generating an explanation for why an explicitly stated fact or concept is true. 1. I create an explanation for why a straightforward fact or concept is true. 2. I am confident that creating an explanation for why a straightforward fact or concept is true helps me with learning the specific material. 3. I find creating an explanation for why a straightforward fact or concept is true useful. Part 8. Please think about explaining how new information is related to known information in class, or explaining steps taken during problem solving. 1. I relate new information to previously known information. 2. I explain the steps taken during problem solving. 3. I am able to recall the new information I related to previously known information during an exam. 4. I am able to recall the steps I have taken during problem solving during an exam. 5. I find explaining how new information is related to known information useful. 6. I find explaining steps taken during problem solving useful. 7. I am confident that relating new information to previously known information helps me learn the material. 8. I am confident that explaining the steps taken during problem solving helps me learn the material. Part 9. Please think about self-testing or taking practice tests over to-be-learned material. 1. I often self-test myself on the material learned in class within a given week. 2. I take quizzes for my class within a given week. 3. If allowed unlimited chances, I retake quizzes until I receive the score I desire. 4. I often am able to recall material on an exam from self-testing or practice tests. 5. I find self-testing or taking practice tests useful. 6. I am confident that self-testing or taking practice tests increases my exam grade. 7. I find taking quizzes every week for class useful. 10. please think about implementing a schedule of practice that spreads out study activities over time. 1. I space out my study activities over time. 2. I feel prepared when it comes time to take an exam because I spread out my studying activities throughout the weeks. 3. I am confident that spacing out my study activities helps me with learning the specific material for class. 4. I am confident that spacing out my study activities increases my exam performance. 5. I spend at least 1 hour a week studying for a class. What this means: there are 10 sections in this survey. Add up your score for each section separately, and this will provide you with a sense of how much you use each of 10 study techniques relative to the others. In the section that follows, you can learn about which ones are more useful for you, and you can adjust your usage accordingly. 10 things we thought we knew that are wrong. Throughout this book, we highlight many different myths. The key is to not let these unproven and sometimes wrong beliefs about learning hamper your own studying. The following are some of the biggest myths. 1. People have different styles of learning that are relevant to how they should be effectively taught or study. 2. Learning effectiveness can be illustrated in a pyramid. 3. You learn most informally, 70%, then from others, 20%, and then from formal education, 10%. 4. Having knowledge is not important because you can look everything up. 5. Knowledge is as perishable as fresh fish. 6. You learn better if you discover things for yourself versus having it explained to you by others. 7. You can learn effectively through problem-based education. 8. Boys are naturally better at math than are girls. 9. In education, you need to take account of different types of intelligence. 10. Our memory records exactly what we experience. You have probably heard of many of these myths. The one that really makes most faculty squirm is the first one, which perhaps is the most common misunderstanding about learning. Many people believe they learn better when they are taught in a style that matches their most preferred learning style. For instance, if they prefer to learn with visuals or by doing, their instructors should teach them with either visuals or experience, respectively. However, the data says otherwise. In a major review of studies that examined this issue, Pashler and colleagues concluded that the best instructional method involves different styles and that a match between learning and teaching style is not important. Share that the next time someone tells you they wish their instructor taught in a way that matches their style. The learning style issue is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many other myths out there. Our second major pet peeve relates to the learning pyramid, also known as the cone of learning, shown in Figure 1.1, which can be found in the print and ebook versions of this book. The model was supposedly developed by the National Training Laboratories Institute in the early 1960s, but the exact details are hard to come by. Although it is commonly shared as a meme on social media, it is inaccurate and portrays major misunderstandings of how we learn. This figure has no factual basis, so pay it no heed. Many instructors who use the learning pyramid as a guide feel pressure to lecture less, fearing that it would lead to less learning. First, remember there can be great lectures and bad lectures. Any technique or technology, for that matter, can be used poorly. We are sure you have experienced some dull and boring ones too, but we hope you also have experienced great lectures. In fact, any of the techniques in the learning pyramid can be used well or poorly. Although active learning can be effective, there are many varieties of it, such as group work and problem-solving out loud, that are not always effective and can undermine your learning. Most important, the numbers in Figure 1.1 do not come from any solid research. On closer examination, those numbers were found to be mere approximations and guesstimates. So, do not panic because your learning will not suffer if you do not have a chance to teach others or practice doing, although in some circumstances, these approaches can be useful. You cannot blame yourself for believing many of the myths we listed earlier. In fact, a study of teacher training programs in the United States showed that 59% of programs do not mention any key principles of learning that are based on strong experimental research from cognitive psychology. Moreover, Inaccurate findings related to learning are so common and widespread that some researchers deem them urban myths. Social media makes it easier to share an infographic of a myth than to educate students on the realities of learning. How much can you do with a 140-character tweet anyway? Even if you do read the research on education, you still may not know what to believe. The two summaries of what works and what does not work for learning are shown in Exhibit 1.1, which can be found in the print and ebook versions of the book. Notice anything interesting? Even if you were never good at those spot the differences puzzles, you should have noticed that both table columns list the same items. That is because one study may find that using a certain method, for example, group learning, is useful, whereas another study did not find the same outcome. This is a good reason why you should be critical about what you read and have a basic working knowledge of research methods. Some types of research studies are more robust than others. For example, if you note the word meta-analysis, you should pay more attention because meta-analyses are studies that combine a lot of different study results together and are therefore the strongest examples of scientific evidence. Figure 1.2 shows the hierarchy of scientific evidence with the strongest evidence on top. Evaluating research, however, is not what this book is about. We have sifted through the research for you. When we give you study tips in this book, you can rest assured that our tips are based on the most robust studies available. What is metacognition? One thing we know from an abundance of research is that to study like a champion, your major goal is to improve your metacognitive abilities. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking. When you consciously look at what you know and what you do not know and try to change your thought processes, you are doing metacognitive work. People have a wide range of automatic thoughts about and reactions to everyday activities. When you approach learning, you automatically use the same strategies you have used for years without necessarily examining what you are doing. We human beings do not always use the most effective ways to think, and we often have unhealthy ways of thinking. Although fascinating areas of study include why people have biased, inflated, or negative views of themselves, those are not the types of thoughts we address in this book. It is true that sometimes our thoughts are inflated too, and those are the kind of thoughts with which we concern ourselves. When you consciously look at what you know, what you do not know, and try to change your thought processes, you are doing metacognitive work. Metacognition has been a major area of focus in cognitive study since John Flavel first coined the term. For obvious reasons, examinations of metacognition are a major part of research done on cognition in education because it involves many critical functions, such as being consciously aware of oneself as a problem solver and the ability to accurately judge one's level of learning. You are not listening to this book to learn about research on metacognition, but if you want to know more, you may want to check out Dunlosky and Rawson's book, which features reviews of studies of reading, note-taking, planning, and more. In the chapters to come, we cover 3 distinct parts of metacognition as they pertain to learning and studying. First, you need to be able to better plan out your learning. Next, you need to monitor your learning, paying attention to what you know and what you do not know. Finally, you need to revise your plan according to your assessment of your learning. The major cognitive strategies that are part of studying like a champion involve 3 elements of metacognition, and knowing which strategies are most effective is also an aspect of metacognition because it concerns your knowledge about how your mind works and learns. Being a study champion. An overview. Research has uncovered many variables that influence how well you learn. Here are some of the factors most frequently discussed in the educational psychology literature: motivation, habits, ability, effort, self-efficacy, social support, goals. These factors are not surprising. Of course, you need to work hard, care about your learning and scores, and have goals and good study habits. You should also make sure you have a positive mindset that includes believing that intelligence is flexible, not fixed. Although many of the predictors of learning seem obvious, others are not discussed as often. 2 somewhat surprising ones are social support and self-efficacy. For example, the belief that you can successfully accomplish something. Many teachers may not give the value of support and rapport enough credit, but clearly, they are key components of successful learning. In a major Gallup-Purdue study of successful college students, 63% of the more than 30,000 students sampled said that having at least one professor who made them excited about learning was critical to their success. Feeling that teachers cared and having a mentor who encouraged them to pursue goals and dreams were also deemed important. Might there be other significant factors, even if they are not discussed as frequently as the ones just mentioned? Which factors are really the most important? John Hattie took a close look at more than 65,000 studies of student achievement. Together, the studies involve close to 250 million students. Yes, 250 million. He did complex meta-analyses and used a handy statistical indicator called an effect size, which allows you to get a strong sense of just how important a certain factor is. The higher the effect size, the more important the factor, and thus it's a great statistic to look for when you read about research, even in social media. Hattie created a table that listed the top 195 factors that influence learning. The most important factors to blame, with low or negative effect sizes, included depression and television watching. Some important factors to praise, those with positive effect sizes, included teacher estimates of student achievement, teacher efficacy, study skills, and classroom discussion. Class size? Not a big deal. Single-sex schools, gender, or type of testing? Next to no effect. Wait, it gets better. Hattie then did something that saved a lot of us a lot of time. He combined all the data from all the different studies and looked for common groupings of factors that influenced learning. The goal was to pinpoint the factors most responsible for learning. Hattie's work suggests that the lion's share, near half of what predicts learning, is how you approach studying. The next largest single chunk of influence was teacher qualities. What teachers do, their training, their characteristics, account for 20% to 25% of the variance in learning. The rest can be attributed to your peers, 5%, home factors, 5%, and a number of other smaller contributors. The most important finding for our purpose is this: half of learning depends on what you do. So, if students' study habits are 50% of the deal, which study habits are the most effective? In perhaps the most in-depth review of study techniques to date, Dunlosky et al. Rated the effectiveness of 10 learning techniques that are all free to use, and at least some are often used by students. They also rated the technique's utility or practical usefulness on the basis of the extent to which the technique would apply to different learners, classes, content, exams, and educational settings. All 10 techniques are listed and defined in Table 1.1 and in the glossary found in the print and ebook versions of the book. All 10 can improve learning, although they vary in utility. You actually met most of them in the Start Now survey that we hope you completed earlier in this chapter. In the chapters to come, we explain which of these techniques are most effective, as well as how to use them, and for which subjects to use them. Close to half of what predicts learning is how you approach studying. A look inside the classroom. If you have checked to see which study strategies you use by completing the Start Now survey, you may wonder what strategies other students tend to use. You may also wonder whether the strategies really matter in terms of class performance. Let's take a look at a real-world classroom study designed to figure out what students use to study and how these strategies relate to class performance. If you skip the survey, this is a good time to go back and complete it. Brianna Bartoszewski, one of Regan's undergraduate students, conducted a great classroom study that included a measure of all 10 study techniques included in the Start Now survey. In addition, Brianna and Regan had students rate the course lecturer and professor to see how the different factors related to exam scores in comparison to the study techniques students often use. In fact, in the Start Now section, you completed a portion of the actual survey Brianna and Regan used. The students listed their favorite class and then answered questions about their own study habits in regard to this class. Figure 1.4 displays the extent to which each technique was used. Does it map what you use most? Not surprisingly, some techniques, such as rereading notes and memorizing key terms, appear high on the list, even though these techniques are not as effective as others. However, the students in the study also use
Sample complete. Ready to continue?